Yeah, I couldn't come up with a good dance for that one. Hey guys, how are ya? Hey Jill, hey Druid. Thank you, Druid. Marianne Tea Cake was here for a few minutes, but she had to go. So, sadly, when guests stop by, you can't force them to watch Twitch. But I'm glad she stopped by. It was good to see her for a second. So, guys, it's Monday. Oh my goodness, and we're almost all the way through June. Wow. I mean, literally, 2024 is halfway through. It's crazy. Oh, hey, Kate. Lurking and working. I like it. So, today, hey, Quiltish. So, saw many of you last night when Jill and I had our hijinks and combing cotton, and it kind of devolved halfway through into poop stories, and it was ridiculous and fun. But if you get a little squicked out by things like having had to clean up explosive poop at a job, maybe skip that one. But it was fun. We co-streamed, and yeah, I think we might do that again soon. So hopefully you guys that were there have fun and aren't like whispering to everybody else like, don't go again, it's crazy. So yeah, today I want to give you guys an update on my Ardis James my Ardis James project, and I have a little unboxing that I might do. Well, I'm not might, I will. And then we're on our last chapter of the Chintz book. I don't think we'll finish today. Not because it's a long chapter, but because there's an appendix, and I think the appendix is kind of interesting. So yeah, so that's what we're gonna do today. I always say it might not be like a full 2 hours, but every time I say that, I go over. So I don't know. Who knows what today will bring? So let's see. I intended to give you guys like a sketch for today to really help you visualize what this project's going to look like. But I did not get my sketchbook out, and I mean I do have like an initial sketch, but I wanted to put something together that was a little more like, I don't know, lifelike, so it would make sense to people. I have to give my husband a sketch also because he is going to be doing some photography for me, and I need him to figure out the best place to do it as far as lighting. So he's like, I cannot visualize this thing, you're going to have to do a sketch. So I will show you guys that on Tuesday. I want to keep the actual pictures under wraps for a little bit longer. Just kind of do the big reveal for the textile talk. And I think actually there will be a blog post that'll go up a few days before. So if you pay attention to the Quilt Alliance blog, you will probably see things early. But I thought it might be fun to keep it in suspense. So you've seen pieces and parts, and then you'll see it all come together. So first of all, I'll show you parts that you have seen and they've evolved. So you know that there's 2 typewriters involved. And they are now in their final form. You can see they're upholstered. There's an upholstered keyboard, and there are buttons signifying the ones that will work to produce audio. And I've got these rolling pins are in place of the the roller. I don't know what you call that on a typewriter, the roller thing. And I rigged up a little elastic system so that these stay on. And the quilt, which you know is narrow, I've showed it before, it will feed under here. And so this is typewriter 1. I've got a little skirt. I made a little skirt with a dish towel. It has to cover up some inner workings. So this is number 1. I also have some clothesline and clothespins. There's definitely some feminist subtext going on here. So that's typewriter 1. And then typewriter 2 is a different colored coronet, I'm sorry. It's a coronet, Smith Corona coronet. But same keyboard, different colored upholstery, It also has its rolling pin, and its little skirt is one of those dish towel calendars. It happens to be 1976, although with the way I stitched it, you can't see that, but I know what it is. So, guys, you guys know that I have a little bit of an obsession with the bicentennial, and I have just over the years managed to accumulate some things that are specifically bicentennial. And some of these dishcloths with the date, the calendar dishcloths, I have a couple with 1970s dates, and this one was one of the bicentennial ones. So, speaking of bicentennial, you guys know, like, I love the eagle quilts, and I just have this kind of obsession with the bicentennial. And somebody, and I can't remember, I don't think it was the AQSG, I think it was like one of the antique quilts Facebook groups. Somebody had posted, oh, I know what it was. It was Sharon Waddell, who is the sort of the chairperson, the head of the AQSG seminar committee for this year. She lives in Tarrytown, and so she's the person charged with being in charge. I think she had posted a pre-bicentennial quilt, and our friend Mary Kay said something to the effect of, so many of these quilts were signed, be really interesting research project. And I was like, perhaps for a person who's obsessed with the bicentennial, this might be something to work on. So, and particularly for like a 2026 study center. Now, wouldn't that be perfect, right? Because that will be the 250th anniversary of the United States. And I believe that's called it's like a sesquicentennial, I think. Oh, I did a piece a couple of years ago for Ellicott City, which is a small town here in Maryland. And they are a little bit older than the United States. So they celebrated their 250th anniversary, I guess it was 3 years ago now. Oh gosh, time flies. Or 2 years. In any event, they used that big word, whatever that big word is for 250. I think it's sesquicentennial. Although I've heard a different word, so I don't know. Anyway, yeah, Jill was with me when I went on the rolling pin buying spree. I actually have 4 rolling pins because I wasn't sure what was going to work. And I kept finding cool looking ones. So the sort of basic ones ended up in here, and I have 2 others that I'm saving for another project. But also you can see I didn't mention there's some little measuring tape there. So, and these will sit back to back, and the quilt will feed under. So, you think of me every time you see rolling pins. Well, I thought as we were in Adamstown, PA, is where I bought the rolling pins. We were in one antique mall, and I was like, oh, these are pretty decent price. And those 2 are vintage. I don't think they're particularly that old, but I'm like, these are decent price. And if they don't work out, I certainly can find other uses for them. And then we went to another place, and of course I found more. And then we went to another place, and I found even more. And I was like, oh my God, these antique malls and stores are like they're like the mother lode of these vintage kitchen implements and tools. And then when I was in California, because the California has more of, I would say, at least the one antique mall I went to seemed to have more of like the vintage vibe versus like the super antique vibe. And they had a ton of that cool vintage, the red and green handled kitchenware and stuff. And I just kept thinking, like, here I thought, like, oh, I should get these 2 rolling pins because I don't know if I'll find anything else. And oh my God, I could have had like 800 rolling pins. Oh, the antique mall that specializes in kitchenware, I don't need to do that. Because the thing is, we talked last night about what do you collect? And I don't collect vintage or antique kitchenware, but dang if I could, because it's so cool looking. Like, no, Stephanie, you can't collect everything in the world. So that is where we're at with the typewriters. Now, here's a little bit of the inner workings. I mentioned the audio component, and the keyboards have buttons, literal buttons, clothing buttons, that will indicate which of the buttons to press for audio. And this is the inner workings of the audio. And you can see I have them all numbered, so I can match them up with the voices they belong to. And these are just like if you've ever seen like Build-A-Bear, or children's toys that have recordable audio in them. They use these, and there's a little switch here on the top that puts it in neutral mode, I guess, so it's not using the battery. And then you can turn it to record mode, and you hold the button down. You can record a 10-second message, and then you put it on play to play it. So these were kind of a cool thing I found. It was really a whim when I started looking for them, because I was like, can you buy those? Like, if I go to Build-A-Bear, will they sell them to me? Like, I don't know. And I was kind of like, how much do these things even cost? I don't even know. They ended up being pretty affordable. I think for 12 of them, I paid it was under $40, I think. So, and I do have a stipend to pay for some of this. So, yeah, I thought that was a pretty good deal. So I have 2 of these. And tonight is the night that I finish up this engineering, I guess. I keep thinking like, oh gosh, all the people in my family, I have 2 engineers in my family. My husband's pretty handy, my father-in-law's pretty handy, but I was like, I don't want help from anybody. I need to do this on my own. And so fingers crossed that my engineering with these typewriters and these things has worked out. So I guess you'll find out soon. So that is the physical parts. And I've got typewriters falling all over the place. Okay. The voices of the women. So now in the Quilt Alliance's archives, and maybe I should back up a little bit. I think most of you here kind of know what I'm working on and know about it, but just in case somebody's watching that doesn't know. I was one of the Ardis James Scholars this year, 2024, for the Quilt Alliance. Ardis James was an amazing woman who, with her husband, Robert James, they had a huge quilt collection, and they were able to help start the International Quilt Museum in Nebraska. And so with a gift of 1,000 quilts, they helped start the museum. And so they're a very important name in quilt history and quilt collection, quilt collecting and all the stuff that we love. And so Ardis placed money. I'm assuming that this is how it works for these kind of things. It's in trust with the Quilt Alliance for the presence of royalty. Oh. Well, as a matter of fact, yes, I am. But anyway, annually they're able to give this scholarship. And this year, they give it to two scholars every year. And this year, one of the scholars is actually a collective. So it's 2 women, and their project is about the Daughters of Dorcas, which was an African American quilting guild. And I think and it's one of those things I need to do more research on, and probably look at their project when that comes out. I'll learn more. But I believe it sort of reminds me, in what I've read, kind of like a DAR. But it was, I think it was specifically with needlework and for African American women. I think at the time it was probably, formerly enslaved women that were part of it. So, yeah, I need to do some research on that, because I know it's a really interesting topic, and I'm really super excited to see theirs. Now, of course, my project is focusing on mental health, and I want to say ironically, I don't know, it worked out this way, that the Quilt Alliance, they have this oral history project. That's what this whole scholar thing is about, is utilizing their oral history project. And it's since, I want to say, the early 90s, mid 90s. I know the dates are on all of the audio, but they started this project, Quilters Save Our Stories. And they're these interviews, and anybody can do them. That's the cool thing. If you feel the calling to interview quilters, you can do that. And there are guidelines for how to do the interview. They have specifics on how they want the interview done. And, you have to do a transcript and all that stuff. But one of the questions in their questionnaire is, has quilting or have quilts helped you through a tough time in your life? And, many of the interviewers were like, well, sure, it's, when I'm, feeling low, I, can pull out my quilting and just, brings me happiness. There were, certainly some people that were like, well, I can't really think of anything specific. There was at least one interview, and there probably are more, but one interview specifically who said absolutely yes, but I'm not going to talk about it. And I was like, whoa, that must have been a really hard thing, that whatever this person experienced. But such a wonderful thing that quilting could help them. And so that's what my project is about these women's voices and their, what they had to say about quilting being their the savior in their mental health. There's lots of women in this project that have been involved with like memory care projects, people with dementia and Alzheimer's. And, there's probably some of you out there either have had loved ones or you yourself have maybe been a caregiver. And, caregiving is really stressful. It can and really put a strain on people. And, whether you're caregiving to a person who's getting better or to a person who's at the end of their life, either way, it's very stressful on caregivers. And, often caregivers, their mental health needs are not addressed. So that's a component of it. And obviously processing grief is a component. So many women have, explained loss of loved ones, and how they either used quilting to commemorate the person or to get them through the grief, or to kind of, hold the space while somebody was in their last days, which is a hard thing. I will be transparent. I have sat with a person who was dying and passed away in my presence. And you're kind of like, you don't know what to do. You know that there's nothing you can do. So you kind of have to just hold the space there and be there for them. And quilting can be something you can do, handwork especially. I don't think everybody was talking about handwork in their interviews, but many of them were. And that also speaks to me. So I thought I would read you some of the quotes, and you'll get the audio when I actually release the project. But I thought, some of these quotes are just so powerful, and I thought I would share them with you guys before they go out into the world. Now, these quotes, I think almost all of them, there's only a handful that don't appear on the quilt, but most of them appear on the quilt piece that goes with this. It's a three-dimensional sculpture. And a select number will go on those 12 audio pods, those little pucks. So I guess without further ado, I'll read them. And this is in no particular order. These are just, I went through a lot of interviews. Thank goodness for the search feature. And then with the, I don't know, I think it ended up being like 20 some, it was probably about 28 that I chose. There were some where the audio was just not good enough. They were done on a legitimate tape recorder, like old school, put the tape in and push the button. And so they weren't really great. There was a few that I had to clean up in audio editing software. And there were two that they couldn't find. And they are not sure, they have the transcripts, but they don't have the audio. So I had to get it pared down with what I had, but it's still lots of great stuff here. So without further ado, I'll read them. This first one comes from a quilter named Helen Allen, and she says, if it hadn't been for quilting, I don't know if I would have made it. It gave me something to do to take my mind off of it, so quilting has really saved me. And I think in her case, if I remember correctly, she lost a child. And it was an adult child, but I mean, that doesn't make it any less hard. Thelma Robinson Kirschbar says, it does help, and not only working on a quilt, but quilting friends are big support. That one really hit me. I was like, yes, it's not only, this tangible thing with your hands that is helping, soothing, all that, but you've got the support system. And I mean, how many quilters, find me a quilter who hasn't faced some kind of struggles in their life. I mean, many of us are, we're not spring chickens, and, the whole adulting brings you to a point where you've had some hard times. And so being able to come together collectively, and, you think about the quilting bees and, these quilt frolics and stuff, they're supposed to be fun, But I can imagine that in many cases, women kind of poured their hearts out, and that, that's like group therapy, right? Alva Barrett, and this was interesting. She was, I think, a very elderly woman at the time that her interview was done. And she said, and in her case, it was also loss of a child. She said, life suddenly had no interest for me at all. I prayed to die. Somehow I got a hold of some scraps and I pieced a quilt. And I think the further part of her interview said, she just kept working at it and she made this quilt. And by the time she was done, the pain wasn't gone, but she was like, I can get out of bed again. So Barbara Ann Bauer Bennett says, when a tragedy happens, it takes away your desire to quilt for a while. The first steps out involve doing something for another person with your quilting. That gives you some purpose in what you're doing. And I think purpose is a big part of like quilting for therapy, because it's not busy work. A quilt can be a gift to someone. It can be useful. Worst case, the dog can sleep on it. Use it for a picnic, take it to the beach. Quilts are just, they don't have to be some amazing art piece. They can literally be therapy that just then turns into a cuddly object. Susan Turnquist says, frankly, I don't know how I got through life without quilting. It's been a great source of comfort. Carol Soderlund says, the quilt that I made in my mother's memory was really kind of a cathartic quilt. And I love what she says here. It's kind of a good pun. I really think that quilt was a true comforter. Liza Pryor Lucy, who you might know who she is, she works, does a lot of work with Kay Fassett. She says, hand quilting. I will do that to get through a difficult time. It's a handwork thing that soothes me. Dorothy Stapleton said, it was my sanity sewing. So yes, I have used it as a crutch. And I don't think, it's not a crutch. I'm not to disparage what she said, but I don't think of it as a crutch. I think of it as like, it's medicine and support system. Nikki Becker said, when I lost my mother, I had a quilt that I worked on while I sat with her in the hospital. It became very special because it helped pass the hours. And that's sitting with someone who, there's nothing you can do. So that sense of doing something, with a purpose. Cheryl Lynch said, I think it is important to me because it is an emotional outlet. Claudia Comey said, art has a way of reaching into places that are difficult to tackle otherwise. Ooh, and that one's big too. There can be a lot of meaning in something that, on its surface is just pretty, or, has great technical skill, but there can be so much more meaning in it. That you may never know, and it might only be there for the person that made it. Judy Whitson, her story was actually not her own, but about helping another person. And she said, I've started helping this person grieve by helping her make this memory quilt. And I think she went on to say that, I think it was the person's mother, and that she'd help them gather clothing, and, we're talking through, what could be done to make the quilt and how it could be helpful. Kathy Weaver said, the act of quilting is relaxing. Hey, Jan. Take a break for Butterick Lady. I love her. Thank you so much for your support. Diane, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name right, Bilak. She said, I, to this day, claim it as my therapy and think I've saved a lot of money in therapy fees because of it. And I love that quote, too. I think that one's just so good. It's comical, but it's true. Ardis Scholar Weinstein says, my life has taken some really unhappy turns, and I find my center all the time by going to my studio. It's always been the one place that I can go to that is just mine and feels like I can stay whole in that area. Eileen Louderhorn said, I just became so absorbed in what I was doing that I found I had moved from this place to that place without knowing it. And it was probably because I was deeply trying to express what was going on with me. And that, if you've ever been in therapy, which I highly recommend, that's something you kind of track your progress in. You can kind of see over a time period where you might have had an unhealthy reaction, or you might have just been buried under grief, or you just might have had something like triggering your emotions or your behavior. And you can kind of track and see, as you work through your emotions, you get to a point where you're like, okay, it's still hard. I still have, grief or anger or whatever it is, but it's not as bad. Or when I get those feelings, I've processed them enough that I know what to do with them. So I can see, like, again, it's this subtext. The things these women are saying, like, it hits me because I know it resonates. I know exactly what they mean. Janet Finley says, it's just gotten me through life, is what I say. Gloria Lothman said, it certainly was part of the healing process. I took up quilt making and gardening, both wonderful therapies. And of course, this is the Quilt Alliance. I'm going to focus on quilts. But, as a long time crafty person, I've tried, many different types of making, and working on sculptural pieces, you kind of have to learn some skills, and I contend that anything you do with your hands that takes some sustained effort is going to be beneficial, whether that's knitting, crochet, weaving. Sometimes people people do things like woodworking and, building models, all that kind of thing, like sewing, garment sewing, just pretty sewing, decorative sewing. All of those kinds of things sort of work the same way. They have produced different results, they produce different things, but in the way that they work on our consciousness, I think is the same. Bonita Morley said, quilting was able to lift my spirits during a difficult time. It continues to lift my spirits each time I work with needle and thread. Zora Selikin said, it keeps me interested in getting up each morning. And I want to say she was a fairly elderly woman too at the time her interview was done, and I mean, gosh, she didn't talk about anything specific, like a loss of a loved one or anything like that. So, the subtext I read there is this is a person that possibly suffered with depression, and the pull of the quilt was what got her, up and ready in the morning. Marjorie Escher said, totally occupied my mind. I think it's very therapeutic. Judith Content said, there is no doubt in my mind that color is a therapy for me. And when I saw her quote, in her transcript, I immediately thought of Dr. Dunton. You guys know I can bring Dr. Dunton in at any time. But one of the first things that really drew him to quilting was the fact that there was color involved. And he was doing some research on color therapy and how color could impact psychiatric patients. And so, when I saw Judith's comment there, I was like, yeah, I mean, that's part of it. That's an aspect of it. And then finally, Sandra Koch says, it's very relaxing, Like, I think that there is no better way to say it. So yeah, those are my quotes. I'm sorry, I missed one. This one was Vivian Milholland. She just says, I felt like making a quilt. And I think that, in her story was like, life was overwhelming. And I felt like making a quilt. Boom, mic drop. So, yeah, I hope those were interesting to you. And once I get the whole piece together, I got like 2 days because I got to have photos done on Wednesday. So, yes, Robin, absolutely. If it brings you joy, it's beneficial. And, having just lost a loved one, there's times where you feel guilty laughing or smiling. There's times when it's just, it's a joyful thing. but you don't find much joyful at the time, but you can still do that process. And sometimes things like quilting, and I always bring up knitting because I'm a terrible knitter. I've tried, I've knitted some very small things, but I've never been able to finish a sweater, an Afghan, any of it. But I love the act of knitting. It's just repetitive, and it's that kind of motion. There's something about it that's soothing. And so if you can't find joy in something you normally find joyful, you can at least find that rhythmic aspect of it, that it's almost muscle memory kicks in, and it's just like rocking a baby. I mean, that's the best way I can describe it. I don't know how else to really put words around it. So that is the Ardis James Scholar update. And like I said, it's coming up soon, you guys. Back in February, when I found out that I've been awarded one of the scholarships, I was like, oh my gosh. Ooh. I had already done some of the work, because in the proposal I had to do that. I had to like really kind of research into those oral history, those interviews. But I was thinking like, oh, no problem, because when they talked to me about timelines, I was like, oh, no problem. Of course I can have that stuff done. Like, no time at all. But man, life happens, and not just life, but of course I have had some things. I got COVID, and so it came by quickly. And even though I've loved every minute of it, it has been a little bit stressful. But I think I can't remember if I mentioned last night or the other day, working on this throughout. I was working on this while I lost my mother-in-law, and while there at the end when she was very ill. And there were days I couldn't work on it, because I was like, I relate to these women so much right now. I have to step away from it. But I kept coming back to it, because I was like, this is community. These are people that I've never met them, but we have so much in common, with what quilting does for us. So thank you, Robin. Hello, so can she. I am so glad you're here, and thank you for following. I hope you like it. I hope you stick around. These are our people. We're talking all things quilty, and yeah, I'm so glad you're here. I don't know if you've lurked in the past, or if this is your first time here today. I'm glad you're here. I don't teach people about quilting. I don't teach people how to quilt. I teach people about quilting. We do a lot of stuff with material culture and reading quilt books, and just all things quilty. So, oh, so you're a quilt person too, but it sounds like you, based on your name, you also do sewing, general sewing. So me too. I do garment sewing and quilting, and really anything with a needle and thread. So, are you guys ready for some fabric? Oh, you teach. Awesome. Oh, awesome. I love to meet teachers. There's a number of, I'm not sure if you stream, but there's a number of streamers on here that, we definitely poke around in their streams, and yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. I feel like the quilters are going to take over Twitch, right? The gamers, yeah, they got to step aside. They got to give us room. They got to give us some space. Okay, so looked at that, and oh, congratulations! You just started streaming. Well, can we give So Can She a little shout out? And yeah, go check out your stream, and we'll have to look at your schedule. And if we ever overlap, you bet I will raid you. So let's get into the fabric, you guys. So, a dear friend who is an angel. I will not reveal who they are, because I don't want people bothering them. But they have a little volunteer gig where they have to find homes for fabric. When folks in the guilds are destashing or, trying to get rid of things, this dear person is finding homes for the fabric, and I think that is God's work. we all love fabric, right? We wouldn't make quilts if we didn't love fabric. But there's a lot of fabric out there, and it's, more is being produced every day. Um, so, we always obviously want to keep fabric out of the landfill. And my gosh, please don't anybody ever tell me if they see fabric at the landfill. I don't want to know about it. I like to think there's enough angels on earth who are looking after the fabric and are, it's kind of like the cat distribution system. Every cat that needs a home will eventually find it. I feel the same way about fabric. All the fabric that needs to find a home will eventually find it. So, Mario Dim, hello. Thank you for your support, my friend. So, without further ado, my dear secret friend got a boatload of VIP Cranston fabrics, which you guys know I'm a sucker for. And specifically, not just Stephanie loves this fabric and wants to clothe herself in it. I am actually, one of my forthcoming projects is with AQSG, the biannual quilt study, and this 2-year, what do we call this project? Quilt study project is specifically on quilters from it's 1940. I think, is it 1940? Oh gosh, Jill, do you know? Probably not, because you're not doing the study. I think it's 1940 to 1978. I think it's a really specific range of time in the 20th century, and the goal was to choose quilters during that time period to study. And the reason for that specific time period had to do with copyright. But my selection was Florence Pito. We've read 2 of her books, her 2 books. She wrote 2 major books. We've read them here, and she was a really fascinating person. And she not only collected quilts and lectured about quilts, but she made a few. And so one of them, well, honestly, several of them are super amazing. But one of them in particular really speaks to me. And so I decided to study that quilt. It's at the Shelburne, and the Shelburne folks were so very nice. As soon as I reached out to them, they were like, yes, ma'am, here's that high resolution photograph that you need for your quilt study. And just, very quickly, the Florence, because she collected antique textiles and quilts along with making things, she had a bunch of quilt blocks. There were 9 patches, and then she had all of this antique fabric. And so that's what her quilts consisted of. She made, quilts using other people's work, but also she really focused on all of this antique fabric. I think there was very little new fabric in her quilt, these specific quilts. I want to say what I read about the one that I'm studying is that the backing of it, any of the backing fabric, was new fabric. But everything else in it, these 9 patch blocks, and then the alternating blocks were, appliques, were all this antique fabric. And so I started thinking well, I've just started collecting antique fabric, and I'm not cutting it up for Florence quilt. I'm not there yet. But vintage fabric's a different story. So I started thinking, what if Florence in 1950 was going back, 50 to 75 years for this antique fabric? Well, what if I went back 50 to 75 years and I've got fabric from the 50s, 60s, and 70s? Bing, 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 Cranston VIP. Because they are so, when you see those Cranston fabrics, particularly if you've looked at any of the 1970s quilt revival, you will recognize these fabrics instantly. And some of them are 100-year prints, meaning they never stopped making them. Cranston, they were founded in, I think it was 1840 something. They had been around a very long time. And so they were prints they started making in the 1800s. They never stopped printing. So those things come up in the 70s in a lot of quilts. So long story short, I started collecting some of this Cranston fabric, and there are some of the local fabric sales that you can go to. That the Salvation Army does a fabric fair. Just north of me in Pennsylvania, there's a big quilters It's the Mennonite quilters that have this like kind of like yard sale kind of thing. And so I'm planning to go to that in the fall, and finding some stuff on eBay and just poking around. Anytime anybody's like, ew, look at this gross fabric from the 70s and 80s, I'm like, no, give it to me. I'll pay you, I'll give you my firstborn. Again, so I have a purpose for this fabric, and I think that my dear fabric angel has really solved all my problems, because these fabrics are really easy to find in red, green, yellow, blue, and purple, and turquoise. Sometimes are really hard to find, and I don't know, it's part of its time period, part of it I'm sure is print runs. Some of this fabric I think is not Cranston, but it's so similar. So anyway, long story, you guys are tired of listening to me talk. You want to see the dang fabric, don't you? So here we go. This fabric is so big, or the box is so big I can't put it on my desk, but oh, and here's the funny story. I did tell my fabric angel this story. My neighbor, because this box came while I was out of town, and I knew it would. My neighbor was picking up my mail, and I had a couple of things from eBay coming, and I thought that they would have come before I left, and I realized they were going to be delivered right, while I was gone, and I was like, please, can you get these things, because God forbid it rains, or the porch pirates come, I cannot lose my fabric. So I didn't tell her what any of it was. I just said, can you grab these things so they don't get wet or stolen? Well, out of the blue, I get this text message, and she's like, oh my God, you got a delivery from Misfits Market. What am I supposed to do? Do I have to put that in the refrigerator? Like, I have this tiny refrigerator, and she's like frantic. So I'm texting her back, and I was like, riddle me this. Is it from California? Because if it's from California, of course I'm giving away something about my fabric angel, but if it's from the West Coast, it is definitely not produce or things that need refrigeration. So she's like, oh yeah, you're right. It's from a person. It's a recycled box. And I was like, okay. I get home and I look at the box, and I mean, it's well taped up. And I mean, I am astounded at how much fabric she got in this box, despite the fact it's a big box, but she folded, she packed. It was so good. But like just through the little slit, where the box, the top of the box was taped, you could see like a little strip. It was clearly fabric. And I'm like, what was it about picking up this box? It was heavy. Fabric's heavy. It didn't roll around though, because it was so tightly packed. I was like, what on earth did you think it was? My neighbor's a little bit of a space cadet, so anyway, long story, but here's the fabric. So first piece, well, I'm going to actually start with something that is not Cranston, but when she sent me pictures, I was like, oh my God, I got to have that. This is, and it's amazing to me, this was on the West Coast. This is some little Amish people, and little Pennsylvania Dutch symbols. Oh my gosh, are they not so adorable? So this one's gonna have a special place because I really love this one. It's not gonna be in that quilt. So one of the other fabric companies is Peter Pan. Peter Pan is another one that is one of those longtime companies. A lot of their stuff came out, I guess big time in the 30s and 40s. I think they were selling probably through Sears, Pennies, that kind of thing. And there's a whole history, I'm sure, to Peter Pan that I just have not researched yet. But anyway, this is a Peter Pan print. And like I said, if you've been around for a minute, you're going to recognize these. I have a quilt top that many of you may have seen that I posted a while back, and it's full of these fabrics. And when I posted it, I said, I call it my, I might be able to share a little, Jill. We'll see. I call it my Cranston VIP nightmare because it is all of the fabrics. And you can't even imagine the number of people that texted me or posted on my social media like, oh my God, I still have a ton of that fabric in my stash. I'm like, do you ever want to get rid of it? So here's one. Let's see if this is Cranston. Sometimes yeah, this is VIP. So many of them are these really, really cute, little ditzy prints, the little flowers. That's little tossed flowers, itty bitty little flowers are called a ditzy print often. This one, if you have ever seen a vintage quilt, you have most likely seen this print. It may not have been this color. This color is, I don't know if I've ever seen this. This is like a turquoisey color, and it's just something my mother never had. My mother had all of these fabrics, but she never had this one. So, but I think this came in like red, it came in yellow. I think I've seen a blue, it might be in here. There might be a blue one in here. I can't remember. But yeah, I love the color too. And this one is, let's see, this one is actually Marcus Brothers. Marcus Brothers is another fabric company, and I think they're still around, maybe? I'm not sure. But, it's the same, like you see those little tulips and then the little daisy-like flowers? Those to me just scream 1960s, 1970s. Cute, cute, cute. What's this one? I don't know. I don't see anything on the selvage of this one. It looks like the selvage end that had the info wouldn't have been cut off. No. This one just doesn't have info, but cute, cute, cute. I have enough flowers to last me the rest of my life. This one. Now this one, I don't think it has, I saw this one in the box last night. I don't think that this one has a manufacturer on it, but it says it has a copyright. It says copyright number 1370. So this is something that could, in theory, be researched to find out what company made this fabric and when. A lot of times fabrics don't have very much information on them, and so it's really hard to figure out, from whence they came. Particularly when they're little flowers that, or in colors that are kind of, This one, if you were alive in the 80s, you probably had something made out of this. I think these little tiny rosebuds, they get you, flannel. I think I had flannel pajamas that were this, little rosebuds. And the lamp in my bedroom growing up, the lamp shade was little things like that. So in case you haven't figured it out, as a child of the 70s and 80s, this stuff it's my childhood, essentially. This one's a Peter Pan. And I don't have very many navy blue fabrics. And this one, it reads as black, I think, but it's definitely navy blue. The change is so strong with those rosebuds. Yes. Oh gosh, do I love that. Quiltish, yeah. I feel like that those little rosebuds, and yes, they came in like purple, lavender. I think they came in blue. It came in plain fabric, it came in flannel, and it was probably lots of different like brands, different lines, but they all look the same, I'm trying to think. There might have been some. It was a pink background with very pale pink background. Came in seersucker too. I think. This one is some scrappy bits. I don't see. I don't know that this one has any selvages. This one looks like it was. Could have been garment construction. I don't know. It's got a lot of pieces cut with pinking shears. So, but that's a pretty little fabric. This one, this has got, I don't know, you guys, this one's got a little bit of feed sack energy to it. think it is feed sack, although I don't know. My mom, and I think Jill also claims this this skill. My mom can pick up fabric and feel it, and she'll say, feed sack. I'm like, how do you do that? But yeah, yeah. Okay, all right. Oh, look at this one. Let's see this one before. Look at that, little hearts and flowers. Oh, yeah. It is a distinct feeling, but I don't know. I guess I just don't have it in my fingers yet. I think probably the thing is, you probably need to learn that feel, to really, the muscle memory of that feel is probably to feel a feed sack alongside another fabric, and like, I think that's probably what I need to practice doing. Yeah, so Fabric Angel packed the blues on top. So I think we're getting down to greens now. Okay. I think this one might be a VIP, but this is a newer fabric. This is probably I think this is a reproduction of probably something that was turn of the century, late 1800s, but it's definitely a reproduction. But that's a nice green. This. I think this one doesn't have anything on the selvage either. But I remember when she showed me the pictures, I zoomed in on this one, and I was like, oh, look at that. I've never seen anything that was like this shade of blue with these weird acid green flowers. I mean, they're not weird, but it's a strange acid green, and then there's navy blue stems. Right? So is it possible, it's possible the copyright for that one fabric is owned by Peter Pan. You are awesome, Robin. You guys, Robin and Druid, there's a couple of other folks especially. You guys are so quick on the Google. You do my job for me, and I love it. Just a quick search in the Copyright Office. Isn't it wonderful that we can do that? Yeah, it is kind of almost psychedelic. This one, this is sort of like a reproduction, I think. I don't think there's anything on the selvage of this. She told me, she's like, some of these are kind of, they're sort of stiff. They've got a lot of sizing in them. And I think, it's the time period that these fabrics were made. They, once you wash them a lot, they're fine. But in the beginning, they're sort of scratchy and stiff. Oh, this is so cool. This reminds me of the Mary Witherwax quilt. Look at that. They're all kinds of different little things. They're sort of, did I see a little strawberry-like thing in there? Maybe I was looking at that little flower. Oh, no, there's a little strawberry. Look at the little tiny strawberry. Ah, how cute. I think when she showed me and this is, again, my Fabric Angel, you know who you are. She spread everything out and like put them in sections of, here's the greens, here's the blues, and I was like, what she did for me is above and beyond, and that's why I'm keeping her identity a secret. Not that I don't want other people to know. I don't want anybody to start bothering her and be like, I want fabric too. Oh, here's another copyright 1370. This is the green one. What did I just do with the blue one? I've got this big pile beside me now. But here's the green. So I have to put those two together. They're twinsies. Oh man, there's a lot of green here, and it's good stuff. Such good stuff. Look at those. So good. Oh, look at this one. This one, I think, I could be wrong because I think I sometimes get this. I get this wrong. Martin, you do have a lot. How are you doing with that, by the way? Mardim has a lot of fabric inherited from her grandmother, and so I know you and your daughter were doing a lot of projects, but I feel like you probably are still drowning. So what I was about to say is I'm bad about this, the 100-year part. You know, there's very specific fabrics that would be called 100-year fabrics versus a reproduction. A reproduction is where, you know, the fabric company has gone, look at this beautiful fabric from 1860, let's remake it, right? 100-year fabrics were made by, you know, fabric companies that have been around that long, and they just never stopped printing it. So I could totally be wrong, but I feel like this is, if this isn't one of them, this is the genre of what these 100-year fabrics look like. I could absolutely be wrong with this one, but it gives me those vibes. So, oh, you're folding phase 2 of 3 phases and you're drowning in it. Yes. You know, it's sometimes like, what, too much of a good thing is just overwhelming. And, yeah, I get that. Here's another cute little ditzy. Okay. Oh, you guys, I'm not even halfway through this box. We might not get to MacGyver today. Okay, so now we're down to pinks and reds. This has got 1985 written all over it. All of those, and I don't know, what do you call this color? It's like a dusty rose, I guess. Oh, from a decorator standpoint, I hate it. I truly hate it. But, you know, it's the time period. It's the right stuff. So, mauve, are you saying, Druid? The mauve. Oh gosh, it's sitting on my keyboard. Hopefully I haven't. All right, bear with me a second, you guys. I think that I might have hit my keyboard and very much anger twitch. So yes, 1980s. Okay. Hey, making musings. Yes, it is a serious home, my friend. Is it not? I did not get to go to the, I was going to meet Helen and go to the Salvation Army Fabric Fair in York, and I couldn't go. And this was far better, I think. Mario Jim, daughter and I pulled 2 autumn ones and set them aside for you. We will never use 1970s scarecrows. Ah! Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I can't wait to see what that looks like. Laura Ashley. Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. My mother loved this stuff, and she still has tons of it. And the reason why I'm grabbing some while I can get it is because she won't let me have some of her. She's like, you can shop my vintage, but you're not taking the 80s stuff. This one's also got those, you know, very 1980s vibes. You know, and some of the stuff from the 80s, I mean, like the Laura Ashley feel. Hey, Mod Art, by the way. I don't think I said hello to you. These were also decorator things, you know, so by the time, you know, the 70s, we had this big explosion. People are, you know, the colonial revival, people are into fabric again, and, you know, all this stuff, and we have this very specific look. And then we move into the 80s, and we've got all of our dusty roses and our mauves and our, you know, colonial blue, and then it all goes on the walls. So you've got Waverly, you know, and then we get into the 90s, and we've got shabby chic. So, you know, if you've been around for a few minutes, you've seen this wave of decorator, you know, quilting, all the stuff. Let's see. This one is a Cranston, and I think this might be a newer fabric. Cranston went out of business. They closed their doors in, I think it was the early 2000s. I could be wrong. I just read it the other day. It's probably still on my phone somewhere, where I pulled it up. But this one's very soft. So I'm betting this one is probably Cranston of the recent years, the 90s or early 2000s, as it's got that. It doesn't have that 70s like super starch. Oh, this one's cute. I think this is similar to another one of the little pieces. Oh. There's some more Waverly-esque. I had wallpaper like this when I was little. It was pink though. It was like overwhelmingly pink. Yeah, I don't see anything on the selvage of this one. That's what's frustrating though. You know, I think that these companies, I think Cranston VIP seems to be the one, and Peter Pan too, that were, consistently putting information on their selvages. So many of the companies didn't. And, early on, they literally pasted pieces of paper to fabric so that when you bought it, it would have this paper pasted to it to give you information. And, garment fabric's kind of the same thing. Yay, you're stitching your first Mary block. Congratulations, Jill. Everybody give Jill a little hand. For those of you that haven't been around in a while or are new here, we are working on a Mary Witherwax quilt along. The Mary Witherwax quilt was made in, I think it was 1851? 1853? I'm so bad with dates, guys. I'm sorry. But yes, 1800s, mid 1800s. And our friend Dawn bought the quilt, patterned it, and released a pattern book. And so we are working our way through it as a 100-day project. And Jill was a little late getting started. That's okay. It's not a contest. It's not a race. Robin is also working on it. And Robin is actually doing embroidery. So she's taking the blocks and doing embroidery instead of applique, because it's an applique quilt. Guys, look at this one. This one says 1975, 76. I mean, those hearts, and then there's little pears and apples in there. Oh my gosh, so cute. So cute. Okay. Oh. All right. It's like the strata. It's like archaeology. Oh, here's those little rosebuds again. And then, yeah, I think this is probably proof that they weren't all exactly alike, but when you see them, you know exactly. This is like a pale pink background, and the little rosebuds are a little bit tinier. But, okay. Oh God, I'm trapped in my space here with this fabric. Look at those, so cute. I should make a poll. This should be a game. Take a sip of whatever your beverage is. It's 3:00 my time. It's still a little early for drinks, so it doesn't necessarily have to be an adult beverage, but your tea, in my case, my electrolytes. So every time you see a fabric that you have to take a sip. Look at that. And I don't know, what is this little, I guess it's just a different shaped it's a bud, and then I thought at first it would be a little bird, but I think it's a little bud, and then there's little flowers. I think this one might be a little bit older. This is probably 60s. Oh, Peter Pan. Much more simple. So now you can see, like, I have this like huge range of colors now that, you know, I'm not going to have to make my quilt. You know, the kind of earlier stuff I'd been collecting, I have like rust, brown, red, and gold, a lot of that. I didn't have many greens and blues. So, I mean, you can see now I have a lot more choices. And my dear fabric angel will be getting credit for. Look at that. That one's like, they're almost like itty bitty little cabbage roses. Very ditzy. Oh, this one's kind of got the vibes like this one green print that I said is probably not a 100-year print, but it gave me that energy. Now I can't find it. Oh, geez. Well, you see that little black figure? It's a little like leafy sort of thing. It kind of gives me those same vibes. You know, I think sometimes some of these, they'll have similar aspects to them, and it's part of the printing process. You know, how thin of a line is going to print well, and if you're going to have like overprint. You know, this is an example of overprint where, if you can see this very well, but you can see how you get that little white around the green, and that's that overprint effect. And technically it's an imperfection, but I think, you know, we've grown to expect that it's just kind of part of fabric printing, and it gives it depth. But basically it's, you know, these go through multiple processes in printing, and they, you know, the red, and then there will be spaces within the red for the other colors, to do the colors of the buds. And, you know, when they come along, they're not exactly perfectly, they're off registration just a little bit, microscopically. But it's not a big deal. It's not really a mistake, because it gives the fabric depth. You know, if these were perfect, they look very flat. But with that little tiny imperfection, you know, with that little offset, it gives it depth, because you kind of have, it's almost like a little white shadow around the little flowers. This one, nothing on the selvage. Makes me crazy when there's nothing on selvage. But this is gray. That's a gray background. That's interesting. So, oh, this one's got a very early 70s, late 60s vibe to it. This one says Joseph Goldinger Fabrics Company. I've not heard of that company. Have any of you guys heard of Joseph Goldinger? At first I thought it said Goldfinger, but it's a Goldinger. But this is a really pretty fabric. So I'm holding it up so you can see the name there. This one's like kind of berries. And this one, well, I think they're navy blue. They're reading as black, but they're navy blue flowers. Okay. What time is it here? Okay. We're getting down to like what some yardage. Now, if you need that. Well, stick around and we'll see what we can do. So one of the other interesting things, VIP Cranston, and a number of other companies. I think this one's not VIP. It's kind of cut off, but it looks like it says Wellwood Industries fabric, but it's very cut off. You can see it's very cut off. But it's a cheater. You know, guys, I love the cheaters. Well, you know, so can she. Here's the thing. I have fabric coming out of my ears. And aside from the cheater prints are like literally part, I collect them. But many of these, I mean, my selection, once I get that quilt made, I'm going to have to downsize this. And so I have a number of friends who are very much into these prints, and especially the Cranstons. So there will come a time in the future where I will probably be passing along some of these, either scraps or, I can't fit any more fabric. I know the feeling, yet still, I have more and more. But look at these little prints. But Molly, our friend Molly, she doesn't often come in the daytime because of her job, but I know if she sees this, she's gonna scream and squeal because we both love these cheater prints. This one, when my fabric angel showed me the picture, I was like, you know what? If you can't send me anything else, I gotta have that. Look at this, you guys. It is so Brady Bunch. I had a friend who had a sleeping bag that it wasn't this particular print. They were hexagons, but this color scheme. And oh, how I coveted that sleeping bag. I had some old Army sleeping bag that I don't know. My father was not in the Army. I don't know where he got it. Probably the Army Navy surplus. For some reason, he had an old nasty green sleeping bag. That's what I got to take to Brownie Camp. My girlfriend had the adorable Brady Bunch type sleeping bag. Anyway, I definitely coveted it. You got your little bear paws. Oh yes, Partridge Family, absolutely. You could definitely see them with this kind of like in the bus drapes out of this. Heck yeah. Okay. Well, those were the reds we already looked at. Okay. We are getting to the bottom. There's some larger pieces in here. And we're down to the browns and the maroons. Okay. Oh, and here's another pink. That's a nice bright pink. This feels like a newer fabric, I think. Kind of lighter weight. Nothing on that selvage. Okay. One more cheater. Isn't this one fabulous? Oh, a Dresden. Now this one may not be. I don't see anything on the selvage, so I'm thinking this one is not Cranston. And it's got an interesting feel to it. It's cotton, but it feels like it's almost like a polished cotton that's been washed. This might have been more like a decorative fabric. Okay. All right. These browns. This. That's very 60s vibe. That one. Little ditsies. That one is cut down too far. It doesn't have any selvages. And this one. Oh, your husband had a bathrobe with the Dresden cheerleader's mother bar. Oh my gosh. That is so funny. My husband has an interesting bathrobe as well. His is not cheater cloth, but oh my goodness, I would love to have seen that. Looks like the type of thing your grandmother would have cut into blocks and put in embroidery hoops. Yes, absolutely. And I think I've probably seen a million of those. And I know my mom made one at some point. I'm trying to think. I mean, she doesn't have it hanging in her house anymore, but it's I'm sure it's tucked away somewhere. And she, I think hers was like the brown and rust colored Dresden plate. That's definitely Cranston. All right, one last one. Oh, you gotta love a stripe. Oh, so good. And like a borders, I love to do. I love to use stripes for borders because you could do them this way, or you could do them this way, and they're cool in 9 patches too, where you could switch them back and forth. Oh, you guys. Oh, and she also sent me something very cute, very sweet. Look, these adorable little embroideries. Little baby. This and these are. I haven't had a chance to really look at these. I think it's now. I lay me down to sleep. I think it's the. Yeah, I think each block was supposed to say. Yeah, it's now. Now I. Yeah, it looks like there might be some missing. Yeah, but it was each block said something. Oh, look at this little deer. Oh my gosh. Ah. But it was a kit. It was definitely some type of kit. Maybe they were iron-ons. Oh, that doesn't show it very well. Let's see. One behind it. So you could see that it was either stamped on there or it was ironed on. So, oh, so precious. I'm always sad when I see these that they were started but they were never finished. Because they were meant for something like this was meant. It was meant for a baby. It was meant for somebody. Was having a baby or had a baby, and this project was surely in progress for that person. Doesn't mean anything bad happened. It possibly means like many of the quilts and projects I've started, and my mother, and all of you here probably, have started and not finished. And there's no shame in that, because there's people that like to finish projects. There's actually a company, I don't know if you guys know. Oh gosh, I had their website up on my tabs for a long time, and now I don't. But they are a company that if you inherit something that a loved one started and they passed away, so an Afghan, a sweater, a quilt, cross stitch projects, all that kind of stuff. They will finish it for you. They will find somebody to finish it for you and return it to you. Now, I don't know how much the work costs because, we're talking about it's not custom work, but still we're talking about something that is energy, and they don't do it for free. But anyway, I think that is such a beautiful thing because there are too many works in progress that never got finished, and it kind of makes me sad, but I have lots of quilt tops that are ready for quilting. So all right, that was an amazing haul, and again, I thank you so much, my fabric angel. Bee Dazzler on Instagram finishes projects too. Awesome. There are a bunch of independent, not just individuals, not companies, but there are tons of people that do things like that. I have a friend who's been doing it for a really long time, and she basically rescues stuff from, thrift stores. And sometimes it'll be like a quilt top or something. She'll take it apart because, it was never, it never got quilted because it couldn't have been, it was one of those ones where it's got peaks and valleys. Oh, Kate. Yeah, rewatch when you get a chance. But yeah, anyway, so my friend will either finish or recombobulate these quilt tops and other kinds of projects, and then she makes them into things, and she keeps them. I was like, woman, like, how many quilts do you have now? And she's like, a lot. You know, we use them. And I was like, oh, I mean, you're not thinking of selling them or anything? And she's like, many of them are so ugly, I don't think anybody would buy them, but I can't see something sitting there on the shelf that somebody, for whatever reason, thought was beautiful and started making. So I have a lot of respect for that. Okay. Whew. That's a lot. So much beautiful vintage fabric. And the Ardis James project. Let's soak up some MacGyver Percival, and then we'll call it a day. So, you know what I'm going to do? So this section is called Printed Cottons in France. Oh, yes. Some people love ugly quilts. Yes, they do love ugly quilts. And I love ugly quilts. And the other thing is, one person's ugly is another person's, like, gorgeous. You know, I think of some quilts that, you know, friends and loved ones are just like, oh, that's stunning. Does nothing for me. And a lot of times they're quilts that are very, you know, they're very popular. People love them, but they just don't do anything for me. I don't see that spark of, you know, joy in them. But yes, the ugly ones have charm. And, you know, again, you wonder, like, was this something that the person just liked the look of, or did they maybe not have, you know, did they not have the right mix of fabrics to make something pretty? Or it might be some people, yes. Oh, ugly quilts at the dating club. You know what, Jen? I so badly wanted to come yesterday. And I just couldn't get it to work out because of my travel from Virginia back here. And Jill and I we're going to do our stream last night. And I just couldn't do it. But I was like, oh, man, I was so close to. I drove right through Tyson's Corner. I'm like, just around the corner from McLean. But what Making and Musings is talking about is the Fabric Dating Club is one of our wonderful local, you know, Virginia, Maryland. I'm in Maryland. The Fabric Dating Club is in Virginia. But so many great quilt study groups that we have in my area that, I mean, I feel absolutely, I mean, so lucky that I kind of have my pick to go to a bunch of different ones. But this one, Fabric Dating Club, takes place in McLean, Virginia. And it's at a McLean textile, it's like a quilt shop. But it is, the founders are Hazel Carter and Bunny Jordan. And Hazel is, she founded the Quilters Hall of Fame. So, you know, to be in the room with quilt royalty, I really enjoy going to the Fabric Dating Club. So I need to get back. It's just, the dates have just not worked out up to this point. So, oh, that's good. Debbie took pictures. So yes. Yeah, I know she likes to post on Facebook now. So that's awesome. All right. What I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to skip Printed Cottons in France for right now. We'll come back to it on Thursday. I would like to read this appendix. And this was mentioned earlier in the book, parts of it. But it explains some of what is happening with the Indian chintzes and how they historically were making them. And this is a translation of an account given by a Jesuit priest. And so he was, I'm sure, doing missionary work in India. Or I don't know if the Jesuits, if you would call what they do missionary work, but you know, the church, they did their thing, let's put it that way. And so it sounds like that he was in India during this time. So this account might get into that. So I think I'm going to read part of this instead of the chapter, and then we'll come back to the chapter on Thursday. I think the beautiful thing about MacGyver Percival is that he has written each of these chapters in a way that they kind of are independent. I noticed in the section on France, he finally explains some of the references he made earlier in the book. So I was like, okay, I'm glad we got to the end and we kind of got some questions answered. But as a reminder, what we are reading right now is The Chintz Book by MacIver Percival. And this was written in, you guys, there's a piece of cotton. If you were around last night, you know, Jill and I were working on our cotton project, picking seeds out and carding cotton. So, yeah, I had cotton in my hair last night. But anyway, this book was written in 1923. MacIver is a British man who we think, I haven't been able to find out a whole lot of information about him, but the gist of what we can figure out is that he was probably like an antiques collector, decorator guy. He wrote a book about mahogany furniture. He clearly knows a lot about like Hepplewhite and Chippendale and all that kind of stuff. So that's what this appendix is about. You know, getting into the specifics of how that chintz decorator, you know, what became decorator fabric was made. Of course, people were using this fabric for quilts, they were using it for clothing, and they were using it decorator, you know, for hangings, curtains, covering chairs and whatnot. I have also gained a cat, by the way. He's like, hurry up with your chintz book, I'm hungry. So, all right, so let's start the appendix. This is a translation of the account given by the Jesuit priest, Father Cordu, of the Indian traditional methods of producing fast-colored decorated cottons. Included in the collection of letters printed under the title of, now you guys know my French is so fantastic. You can't, it just bypasses your ears. It's so good. Lettres Edifiantes. And then this is from 18 Janvier, which would be January, 1742. Mon Reverend Père, Reverend Father, you have asked me in many of your letters to tell you of any discoveries I might make in this part of India, and I have not forgotten your request. You said you were sure that information might be obtained here which ought to be known in Europe, instancing anything which would contribute towards the advancement of science and the perfection of art. These are lofty expectations for Jesuit priests. I should have done this sooner if my work had not occupied almost all my time. At last, having a little leisure, I have made use of it to find out how the Indians make these beautiful fabrics which are dealt in by the trading companies. So East India Trading Company would have been one, which crossed the ocean from the most distant parts of Europe to obtain them from these remote areas. All right, go on. These cloths are chiefly valuable because of the vivacity, if I may so express it, and the lasting quality of the colors with which they are dyed, which, far from deteriorating when washed, only become more beautiful. It is this quality which Europeans have not yet succeeded in imitating that I now have learned how to obtain. This is owing to no lack of research on the part of our able men of science, nor of want of skill on that of our work people, but it really appears that the author of nature, the author of nature wishing to compensate the Indies for the advantages which Europe possesses over these countries, Get a new one, she sucks. The advantages which Europe possesses over these countries has given them ingredients, more especially water. Okay. I was like, Kate, I'm not sure what you're talking about, but it sounds good. Okay. It's given them ingredients, more especially water, which contribute to the beauty of the mixture of dyeing and painting by which these Indian cloths are ornamented. What I am telling you, Reverend Father, about these Indian paintings has been learnt from certain neophytes skilled in this kind of work whom I have recently baptized. Oh, good job, Reverend. Our father, he's Father, right? Father Cordu, yeah. Father Cordu. He's baptized these Indians. I have questioned them on various occasions and apart from one another, and it is their replies that I send to you. Oh no! Your son's tutor didn't show. How dare. Yes, get a new one. She sucks. I second that emotion. All right, so number 1. Before beginning to make painted linens, it is necessary to make the following preparations. You guys are gonna love this. I think that this information was hinted at in earlier chapters, but he's gonna get into the specifics, and so this really answers a lot of questions. So first, take a piece of new linen, fine and closely woven. The most usual length is 9 cubits. Half bleach it. I will say later how to do this. Take about 25 of the dry fruits called kadu or kadukai. I am surely pronouncing that wrong. Or to be more exact, the weight palam, P-A-L-A-M. I'm assuming palam is a weight specific to India. Now, kadu, I did look this up a while back because I'm like, what in the heck is this? They are a type of fruit that is, I think it's native to India, Asian subcontinent, and it's like a plum from the best I can tell. And it is spelled C-A-D-O-U. And I think this longer name he gives, C-A-D-O-U, C-A-I with the umlaut, E. It's probably the French for what the word, the name. So the palam. This Indian weight equals an ounce and an eighth. Hence, 14 palams and a quarter equal a pound. Break up the fruit and remove the stones, which are of no use. 2. Reduce the dry fruits to powder. In order to do this, they use a stone cylinder in the same way that pastry cooks do when they roll out their paste. You guys know what that is. The cylinder would be a rolling pin. Sieve the powder, or sift it, and put 2 pints or thereabouts of buffalo milk into it, increasing the quantity of the milk and the weight of the kadu according to the quantity of the cloth. So yes, we're talking about dried powdered plums and buffalo milk. Number 4, soak the cloth in it until it is thoroughly wet through with the milk. You then remove it and, wringing it out, put it in the sun to dry. The following day, you rinse the cloth in ordinary water. Wring out the water, and after drying it in the sun, leave it in the shade for a quarter of an hour at least. In the shade, 15 minutes. After this preparation, which may be called internal, you pass to another, which I may call external because it concerns the surface of the cloth. In order to render it smoother and to facilitate the use of the paintbrush, they fold it in 4 or 6, and with one piece of wood, they beat it on another very smooth piece, taking care to beat it equally all over. And when one part is sufficiently beaten, they refold it and recommence the operation. Here, Reverend Father, it is well to make a few notes about kadau. You know, I gotta find out how to properly pronounce it. So a few notes about this fruit, which you may find of some use. Number 1, the fruit is found in woods on a medium-sized tree. It is found nearly everywhere, but especially in Malayalam, a mountainous district, as the name signifies, which occupies a considerable part of the coast of Malabar. 2, this dry fruit, which is as big as a nutmeg, is here used by the doctors and enters especially into remedies given to newly confined women. So this is a childbirth fruit. I guess it's maybe used as a tonic, because I know, often after women gave birth, they, different cultures and groups would use certain types of, I don't know, fruits and tinctures and things like that, remedies. 3, it is extremely bitter. However, when one keeps a piece of it in the mouth for some time, it acquires, some say, a taste of licorice. Well, both of those are awful. So not only is it bitter, but it eventually tastes like licorice. No, thank you. Number 4, and no offense if you like licorice. you know, it's an acquired taste. If, after having moistened it slightly in the mouth and then broken a piece, you take it between the fingers, you will find it very sticky. It is largely to these two qualities, bitterness and stickiness, that they attribute the fastness of Indian colors, but especially to the bitterness. Especially is in italics. Such at least is the idea of the Indian painters. Now I'm kind of wondering, you know, when I read about this fruit, it seemed like a plum, and in fact I want to say it might have been Wikipedia that likened it to, said it was plum-like, but I almost wonder if it's like a persimmon, you know, because he's saying it's bitter. I'm wondering, and you know, it sounds like it's about the same size, so it could be sort of maybe a persimmon-like fruit. For a long time, the art of fixing colors has been sought for in Europe to give them fastness, which is so admired in Indian cloth. Perhaps it may be mine to discover the secret, at least for some colors, by making known the fruit, and above all, its principal quality of bitterness. May we not find in Europe fruits similar to these? Gallnut, dried while immature. The rind of the pomegranate may have many of the qualities of the cadu. I add to what I have just said some experiments I have made with the fruit. 1. Lime. Steeped in an infusion of cadu gives a green. If there is too much lime, it gives a brown. Now, here's the question. Does he mean, with lime, L-I-M-E, are we talking about lime fruit, which would be available in this region, or are we talking about lime as in lie? I don't know. And it does not, yeah, he's not giving much more. If one pours on this brown dye a large quantity of the infusion, the color appears whitish at first, and after a little, the lime precipitates itself to the bottom of the receptacle. 2. White linen soaked in a strong infusion of cadu becomes a very pale yellowish tint, but when mixed with buffalo milk, the linen comes out a rather pale orange. 3. Having mixed a little European ink with an infusion of cadu, I remarked that in many places there was a bluish film similar to what one sees in ferruginous waters. Ferruginous waters? I'm assuming we're talking about like ferric acid kind of stuff. It would be easy, even in Europe, to make experiments with the cadu itself, as it would be easy to import it from the Indies. The fruit is very cheap, and one gets 30 of them for a sol, S-O-L, in our money. You know, I'm starting to wonder, was Father Cordu, yeah, he's French, I guess. I kind of wondered some of the words he was, gave me like a Spanish, anyway. The reason they prefer buffalo milk to that of the cow is because it is richer and more unctuous. I have heard this. The milk of buffaloes, yaks, and other types of beasts is thicker than cow's milk. I guess it has higher like butter, milk fat content maybe. The milk has the same effect on cloth as gum, which probably means gum arabic, and the other preparations they use on paper in order that it may not blot. However, I find that our printer's ink used on a cloth prepared with cadu does spread and even penetrates to the other side, and the same thing happens with the black paintings of the Indians. It must be noted that every kind of wood is not suitable for beating and polishing the cloths. Generally, the wood upon which they are placed, as well as the beater, is made from the tamarind tree, but sometimes they use a tree called porchy, P-O-R-C-H-I, because the woods are extremely close-grained when old. Now, that beating and polishing the wood, it's really interesting. There's a lot of different cultures that do different kinds of textile preparations and actual textile making using tools that beat and soften fibers. And in this case, I think, bringing a polish to the cloth, it seems like that's probably maybe in some ways making some fibers, the fibers more absorbent, but probably also any polish, it could repel, or, maybe be a spot that maybe repels a little bit. I'm not sure. I do know that the beating, though, definitely softens the fibers. The beater is called a katapuli. It is round and about a cubit long. I can't remember what a cubit is. It's not a foot, but it's somewhere around there, I think. And as thick as a man's leg, except at the handle end. Oh my God. So this thing is as thick as a man's leg. I'm thinking of this thing as being about like a baseball bat, but no. I mean, this thing could be, it's a big thing. Two workmen face each other and beat the cloths with alternating strokes. The experienced eye informs them when the cloth is sufficiently polished and lightsome. So again, I think this is like, you know, softening the fibers, making it more drapey. You know, and I mean, he's talking about linen in some cases here. I think in many cases. Yeah, I mean, he's starting off taking the preparation of new linen. And linen has that crispness that, you know, cotton kind of gives up the ghost more easily, whereas linen will stay crisp. So, I mean, that sounds to me like it is like breaking down the fibers further to make it more absorbent. When the cloth has been prepared thus, the flowers and other things to be painted on it must be drawn. The Indian work people have no peculiar method. They use the same as our embroideresses. The painter draws his design on paper and pierces the principal lines with a fine needle. Placing the paper on the cloth, he pounces the design. That is to say, he passes charcoal powder tied in a knot of muslin over the pricked holes, and thus the design is transferred to the cloth. And this is very much the process they use. I mean, still, there's people still that use this technique, but, you know, before we had, you know, light boxes and tracing tools and all that stuff, you know, I mean, all the way up into the 20th century, people used pricking and pouncing. I think we'll often use chalk over like a charcoal, but I would say back in the, you know, 18th, 19th century, charcoal is absolutely a good way to do this. I mean, of course, it stained the fabric, but it's something that's going to be painted over or dyed over, probably not a big deal. Any kind of charcoal will do, except that of the palm, which, say the Indians, tears the cloth. I'm wondering if palm charcoal maybe has some kind of acidic nature to it that would eat away the cloth. Lastly, they follow these lines with a paintbrush in black or red color, and the work is outlined. Now comes the task of adding color to the design. The first which is applied is the black. This color is not much used except for certain details in the stalks of flowers. It is prepared thus. 1. They take some iron dross, and knocking the pieces together to cause the less solid parts to fall off, they retain the large pieces, which are about 9 to 10 times the size of an egg. Iron dross. They put with it several pieces of iron, old or new, it does not matter which. Having placed the iron and the dross on the ground, they light a fire above it. The best fire is made with banana leaves. They put the iron and dross into a vessel which holds about 8 to 10 pints, and pour on it hot congee. I don't know what congee is. Oh, no, he's going to say. This is the water in which rice has been boiled, and care has to be taken that there is no salt in it. This is something I learned very recently, and I believe it is our friend Molly who told us this, that the water, rice, like not the boiling water, but the washing water, if you rinse rice, can be used as a cleaning agent because it has like certain properties. So I'm thinking the boiling also, it pulls the starch out. And no salt. Now, salt is used in dyeing, so... and 5, after having exposed the whole to the sun for a day, the congee is thrown away and the vessel filled with palm wine or cocoa wine, known as kelu. How big is a biblical cubit? 18 inches. Okay, so it's 1.5 feet. It may have originated in Egypt about 3000 BC. It therefore became ubiquitous to the ancient world. Yeah, the Bible, it talks about cubits all the time. The cubit, generally taken as equal to 18 inches or 457 millimeters, was based on the length of the arm from the elbow to the tip of the middle finger and was considered the equivalent of 6 palms or 2 spans. Good information. Yeah, I'd forgotten that. I'd heard that before. So it's supposed to be from here to here. Now, the question is my arm a cubit? Let's find out. You guys, my arm is just about a cubit. I'll have to do better measuring because I'm literally using my little cutting mat that's on my desk. It is 13 inches, so yeah, I think I got a cubit right here. Okay. So the fabric is placed in the sun for 6 to 8 consecutive days when the color used to paint black is ready for use. There are some observations to make on this preparation. The first is that one must not put more than 4 or 5 pieces of iron into 8 or 9 pints of kanji. Otherwise, the dye will redden and cut the cloth. Interesting. Druid. Either your elbow's not as pointy as mine, or your middle finger is as pointy as mine. Oh my goodness. So this is interesting when they talk about the dye will redden and cut the cloth. In talking about this iron, you know, that's gonna become rusty. So, you know, I mean, I think that's probably about the reddening. Now, cutting the cloth, he talks about dross, and I think that's probably chips of, you know, like kind of dusty little bits. And so that this is telling me that, like, it's getting rusty, but those little bits could be, you know, abrasive to the cloth. And that's probably, I would guess, maybe what he's talking about here. Maybe. This is just a guess. Yeah, I am taller than you, so I guess a person of my height is likely to have a cubit length arm. So the third is that they prefer the wine of the cocoa tree to that of the palm. And the fourth, that failing these, they use kavaru, which is a small grain used as food by many people of this country. This grain resembles turnip seed in color and size, but the stem and leaves are quite different. They also employ the varagu, another native fruit, in preference to the kavaru. They take 2 handfuls and cook them in water, which they pour into the vessel containing the iron and the dross. They add lumps of palm sugar about the size of 2 or 3 nutmegs, taking care not to put more or the color will not stand. The fifth is that to improve the color, they mix the kalu with the kavaru or the prepared vagaru. The OUs on the ends of all of these words. The sixth and last remark is that this color does not appear very black, and that it is not fast except on a cloth prepared with kadu. So it is those specific little fruits that have a mordant quality to the fabric. Very interesting. All right, so I think I'm gonna call it a day there because, guys, not only do I have to free myself from this mountain of fabric, there was so much in that box, guys, I did not realize. And I didn't show you everything. There's a couple of things I didn't show you. I'm a lucky cake. So next time we will get to some of this appendix information about actually printing and drawing on the cloth, and then we still have that last section on the French chintz to do, and then we'll be done with this book. And I need to find another one to read you, because that's an important part of this, is reading the books. Okay, guys, so the rest of my week. Tomorrow we start with quilt nerding on YouTube. We start reading Crazy Quilts by Penny McMorris, and so for that one, that's the book club. Now, if you are just joining us here, Jill, my friend Jill, and I do a book club on. Oh, hey, Jill, you're still here. We do a book club on Tuesday nights, and it is on YouTube. It's called Quilt Nerding, for quilt nerds by quilt nerds. And we are starting on Crazy Quilts by Penny McMorris tomorrow. So we have to have the first 30 pages, I think, the first 33 pages read. And this one, I think, is going to be a fun read. Our last book was really good book, but it was very sad. It was the life of a quilter who, oh lordy, she went through some trials. So this one's going to be a little bit more of a light read. So thank you, Druid, for putting that in there. Yeah. So tomorrow night, 8 p.m., you'll find me and Jill there doing our book club thing. This is an off week for Needlework Nights, which is our Wednesday gig. But I will be back on Thursday. Got some more stuff for you out of the Chintz book, and I think we're going to do some Sunbonnet Sue hijinks on Thursday. The rest of this week, I'm going to be finishing my sculpture and photographing my sculpture and writing the piece I have to write about my sculpture. So, busy week. So, you guys have a wonderful week. Stay cool, everybody. I know it feels like we're all getting this heat wave. And if you are not hot, I'm jealous. So take care, guys. You know, I love you so much. I appreciate you. I couldn't do this without you. And I absolutely, bottom of my heart, I appreciate your support so much. And have a wonderful week. Thank you, Making Some Musings. Hey, Jan, thank you. I will talk to you soon. Mwah!